Call the meeting to order. Mrs. Hubley, will you please lead the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. King, would you read the mission statement, please?
Through the combined efforts of students, staff, parents, and community members, our mission is to foster the confidence, knowledge, cognition, and character necessary to instill a strong work ethic, to create an environment of tolerance and respect, to ignite an attitude of inquiry and enthusiasm for learning that will enable students to become productive, responsible citizens.
Thank you. Motion to accept the agenda. Motion, Mr. King, second, Mrs. Albright. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. President's messages. No messages tonight, other than possibly another follow-up work session to our last work session. During your committee meetings, maybe you should be looking at some dates. Kristen and I will coordinate with the superintendent her available dates, and we can probably align them with your available dates to do one. Looking at possibly the first part of December, if that works for everybody, so somewhere around that time period. Moving on, the BOCES representative report. This is from Dr. Gary Purcelli. It says the OHM BOCES board meeting met in virtual session on October 14th. Among the items discussed were the following. Met with Auditor Amy Pedrick from Weston Company and received a report on finances and accounts. There were no new accounting pronouncements, and the procedure followed the format of last year. Independent auditor's opinion. Financial statements present fairly unmodified opinion, which is the highest opinion. Internal controls, unmodified opinion. Compliance of major programs, unmodified opinion. Extra classroom activity funds, a qualified opinion. 2 recommendations for continuing forward offered. Also noted were the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic has imposed on finances and the budget. I think that probably holds true with everyone. The board accepted the auditor's report and moved to begin the budget process for next year. The board received a report from the Capital Projects Committee regarding the completion of the installation of new windows. The district superintendent, Dr. Kilburn, discussed the following with the board in the superintendent's report. Board retreat, format and subjects. A board retreat was scheduled for sometime in January 2021. COVID, a discussion of procedures being taken at the BOCES complex and review of procedures regarding testing, etc., being implemented by New York State. Senior staff provided a detailed discussion with respect to a short-term and long-term at the BOCES technology programs and pointed out the thinking that is part of the future planning and instruction. Noted was the 10 years of progress made in the area of technology education. In 2010, the focus was on smart boards and laptops, and now we're moving toward more hybrid models and greater access. Lastly, the board reviewed each of the proposals before the delegates at the NISBA convention being held virtually, 10/29 to 10/21.
It was 30.
It should be 31. 31/20. The meeting was adjourned at 6:50 p.m. Respectfully submitted, Dr. Gary Purcelli. Moving on, Policy Committee, Mrs. Albright.
Yep, we met, I think we've met actually twice since the last meeting, and you'll see that there are a significant number of policies in here that we have the second read to adopt, and we have some new ones for the first read. And going forward, regulations will only come once to the board unless there's a concern and people want to see it again. But just for the sake of moving things through smoother, we talked about it and we decided that it would be best to just have them come once and that's it.
Thank you. Survey Communication, Mrs. Hubley.
Yes, we met just prior to this meeting. We received some analytic information regarding our reach to parents through our social media and our website. For October on our Facebook page, the page had 751 views, and post engagement can be anything from a like, a comment, or a share. There was 2,467 of those. And new likes and followers was 52. So it looks like our Facebook posts are getting out to a great number of our parents or stakeholders. Website hits, in August we had 6,423 hits. September there was 11,000. And then in October it went down a little bit to 10,000. So that makes sense with going back to school and everything we're doing with COVID. So we're getting all those hits on our website. And then the mobile app, since it launched in August, we had 214 downloads of the app. And the notification button is the most viewed button on the app, and that gets about 1,000 views per month on average. So we're doing a lot of good outreach with our social media.
Thank you, Mrs. Hubley, and it should be noted that communication has never been so good as it has been in this past year. And we've exceeded goals by leaps and bounds with where we wanted to be. So kudos to that committee.
And Dr. Shelmadine.
Of course, Dr. Shalmadine.
And the rest of the team.
Mr. Harmon?
At this time, we're shooting for later in November for transportation.
Okay. Mr. King?
We have a safety meeting scheduled for the 17th of November to take place between the other two meetings that are happening on that day. We're going to discuss some of the things going on with safety in the capital project.
Thank you. Mrs. Jordan, facilities.
We met with the architects last week. We have the capital outlay that's being reviewed, and actually the anticipation it won't be much longer. And that capital outlay will be taking place over vacation, so it won't interrupt the kids or the staff. The capital project, phase 1, we're moving forward on the touchless faucets, kind of putting the other two pieces kind of to the phase 2 project, just because of all of the concerts that aren't going to be happening and the craft fair not happening. They weren't as important as we started. And then phase 2 has been submitted officially, and the pre-screening has been approved, so it's actually moving. The architect seemed like it was moving positively fast. So knock on wood, it continues in that direction. We've scheduled on the 17th. The facilities committee is going to meet first. We're going to be doing a page turning session with the architects and Joanne, Dr. Joanne, to be able to kind of go through the very details of the project, just to make sure we're all on the same page. And then the safety component of the project, the safety committee is going to meet with the architects to discuss the safety part. The capital outlay is being reviewed again, and that shouldn't take much longer. I'm going to leave the EPC for Dr. Shelmadine to talk about, and that's it, nothing else going on.
Thank you. SBI, I know they have a general membership coming up, but
I don't think anything's going on until January right now.
okay. Consent agenda. I need a motion for 3.1, 3.2, and 3.3. Motion, Mrs. Jerry, second, Mrs. Hubley. Any discussion? All in favor? So moved. 3.4, approval of the minutes dated October 6th. I need a motion. Motion, Mr. King, second, Mrs. Albright. Any discussion? All in favor? 3.5, approval of minutes dated October 13th, 2020. Mr. Carmen, Mrs. Jordan. Any discussion? All in favor? Approval of meeting minutes dated October 22nd, 2020. Motion, Mr. King, Mrs. Jerry. All in favor? 4.1, capital updates.
So, looking for me?
I
All
am.
right. So I'll talk now really about the EPC. So the survey or the review has been complete, and we've talked through. The three major components of that are lighting for the classrooms, particularly really replacing all of the rest of our lighting to LED lighting. And the upstairs, especially classrooms, getting also a dimmer switch, because right now the way the sun comes in, there's a lot of glare on the smart boards, and so it's preventing the kids from teachers from using it efficiently and kids from seeing it. And we'll put dimmer switches in the other classrooms too. The priority certainly was up there because the sun directly hits it. The second priority was the condenser units that are up there. We went back and forth about a number of different ways that we could accommodate that. Ultimately, what ended up happening is we're just replacing each unit with a newer unit. Right now, it's expensive to get the Freon and the chemicals that we need to keep it going. So, and there's a couple that are way past their lifespan anyway. So it'll be replacing them. And I like to be clear, it's not air conditioning units. It's not like the rooms up there are particularly cool in the hot weather. They're just more tolerable, I guess. Wouldn't you say? They don't really cool the rooms down necessarily.
Yeah, they just make them more hot.
Yeah. And then the third priority was the control system. So right now we have a lot of pneumatics. So if there's an issue with a pipe or a condenser unit or whatever, it's really a hunt and peck and try to gather where that information is. So putting it all online so that our maintenance people can just bring it up on the computer, figure out where the issue is, and address it. It'll also take care of at 3 o'clock in the morning when the boiler goes, we will get an alarm to know that and address it so that we don't have to close school. So right now we don't have any of those controls, and so that was the third priority. Questions?
Any questions? Thank you. If it's all right with the board, since we're going to be approving, adopting the policies under second reading, I'd like to take 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, 4.5, and 4.6 together. Can I get a motion? Motion, Mrs. Jordan, second, Mrs. Albright. Any discussion on any of those policies? Mrs. Albright.
Yep, on policy number 1002, section 3, which is the very last section of the policy, is just a duplicate paragraph. So I'd like us to be able to accept it with the understanding that it'll just be corrected and sent to the committee, and we'll just make sure that it's done.
Is that okay with everyone? Okay. We'll call the question. All in favor? So moved. 5.1, personnel report. Mr. King.
I'd like to make a motion to accept all the Roman numeral number 5.
Okay. All but Roman numeral number 5. And can I get a second on that? Second, Mrs. Albright. Any discussion on the personnel report minus Roman numeral number 5? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Going back to Roman numeral number 5, can we get a motion to accept the position?
I would like to, outside of the personnel report, make a motion to create the position or accept the position with giving the superintendent the emergency hire authority that is already in policy.
Okay, motion is on the floor with Mr. King. Can I get a second on that? Second, Mrs. Albright. Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Thank you, Mr. King.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, policies in your packet included 5.2, service animals, first read. 5.3, policy 1101, records management. 5.4, school-sponsored media, first read. 5.5, disclosure of APPR data to parents and guardians. 5.6 is a regulation that Mrs. Albright referred to before, New York State APPR Parent Information Guide. 5.7 background is another regulation, background info concerning requests for teachers and principal rating info. 5.8, another regulation, parent or legal guardian request for composite effectiveness score and rating for teacher or principal. 5.9, another regulation, report of classroom teacher or principal overall final quality rating and composite effectiveness score. And that's it. Fine. So 5.9, we need no action on that. Just other than the regulations, which presented to you, if you have any input, please give that to your policy committee. And if you have anything for the policies themselves, any suggestions, get that to the policy committee before the second read. Next is 5.10. Participation in the electricity, energy service company. Would you like to speak to that, Doctor?
Yeah, this is part of the cooperative energy purchases that we do every year. So there's nothing new there. You should have seen them before.
Okay, I need a motion. Motion, Mrs. Hubley, second, Mrs. Jerry. Any discussion? All in favor? So moved. Similarly, we're doing natural gas. We need a motion for 5.11. Motion, Mrs. Albright, second, Mrs. Jerry. Any discussion? Would you like to speak to that, Doctor?
No, again, same deal. We're part of that consortium. It's a way that it certainly benefits the district because we can purchase things at a much more reasonable cost. So,
All in favor? So moved. 5.12, the contract between New York Mills Union Free School District and Danforth EPC. I know all of you have had the opportunity to read that. It was quite impressive. The report, very thorough. So we need a motion to accept that. Motion, Mrs. Jordan, second, Mrs. Hubley. Any discussion on that?
Just,
Mr. King.
the lawyers have thoroughly reviewed it
Yep.
and give us their stamp of approval.
yep. So Mr. Tinker went back and forth quite a bit on our behalf, and so yes, it has been thoroughly reviewed.
Thank you.
Thoroughly written, too.
Yes, it's definitely thoroughly written. Yeah.
Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Okay, now here's kind of a good one to do. 5.13, resolution to ratify the NYMTA agreement. Motion, Mr. King, second, Mrs. Hubley. Would you like to speak to any of that or the process?
I think the process, as you know, we did the intensive facilitated intensive negotiations, and it was really a great process. Each side came in, had 5 issues, and very quickly, with the help of the facilitator, we actually had 3 days reserved for it. It was essentially done in a day and a half, and then we cleaned up language. So great process, I think, from the teacher's perspective. Certainly a great process from my perspective. I can't say enough about the labor relations person from the Teachers Association or Heather Cole, who worked on our behalf. So wonderful process, and I'm thrilled it worked. So
Wonderful. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Principals report. Who goes first?
Hello. Progress reports went out and we've been meeting with teachers and guidance and social worker regarding students that we have concerns about. It appears in the past week or two that the honeymoon period is over. We have seen an increase in the number of students chronically absent and not engaged remotely when they are at home. There's been numerous teachers, guidance counselors, myself making phone calls, sending letters, often without a lot of reciprocation. We're not having a ton of people follow through with coming to conferences or scheduling Zoom conferences. So I did reach out to an attendance teacher at BOCES last week that we're going to be working with to see if they can come to our meetings, maybe get a top 10 list of kids to provide some outreach, into the community, make some home visits, and come up with some plans with them in their, with their families to get them to school, or to make sure that they're getting remotely engaged, because at this point, everyone seems to know the process and understand how to log on and submit. Marking period is ending November 13th. When they are here, our groups do have a lot of things still planned. Senior seminar is doing a food and toiletry drive for Feed Our Vets. Mrs. Kirkland and her students want to really develop a relationship with that organization since they're now located in the mill. Students can possibly get some volunteer hours there. Spirit Week was a success, and we're going to be planning another holiday hoopla week in December. Student Council is again adopting 6 families through Emmaus House to donate Thanksgiving meals to. And the Model UN and Multicultural Club are learning about propaganda throughout history and doing propaganda posters of their own. And we have a contest in the month of November. Finally, the Drama Club will still be doing a Brooks Barbecue fundraiser on December 4th. It will be a drive-through kind of pick-up barbecue in hopes that some drama performances can be planned for the spring. So those tickets should be available soon.
Thank you. Mr. Dodge, what do you have for us?
Well, we did our best to have the best possible COVID-19 Halloween parade we possibly could, and you know, we restricted attendance, and we actually we did live stream it through a link, and we recorded it, and I sent out the recording today. So K-3 parents were given that. It was great. Kids had a blast. It was, you know, a little bit not as enjoyable for the rest of the building who gets to see them usually, but we hope to obviously return to that next year. You know, I think right now the struggle is working out some of the kinks and bugs with quarantine students. So kids who stay home for a substantial time, how do we, you know, get work to them, get work back and grade it and do all these things. So we're still working on some of that stuff, and you know, as these, you know, as we have staff members that, and then we have parents, and then how that trickles into the building, and so it's been some rough waters a little bit, just trying to navigate that and figure out the best course of action and the best procedures to smooth those transitions with those kids. You know, we're working on a very specific plan for our remote instructional plan in case that ever comes to fruition. So our K-6 teachers have developed Google Classrooms, and right now are working to fine-tune and specify, you know, platforms in which they're going to deliver instruction. So we're just going to tidy that up hopefully in the next week or two to solidify that plan, so that in the event that that switch goes tomorrow, that we can move with it without having any setbacks. Parent-teacher conferences are beginning as soon as this Friday. So all those are, so every Friday in November are virtual half-days. So they're going to be conducting those conferences virtually with parents. So that's all I have right now.
Thank you. Doctor?
So I know there have been some questions related to hotspots of COVID cases, and so I want to take a little bit of time and talk about what that means for schools. In short, the governor's come up with a micro-cluster strategy that allows action to be taken as a regional approach rather than a statewide approach. And the micro-cluster actually has 5 processes. It's monitoring data, using that data to identify a specific region or area that causes concerns, and that concern is based on the percentage of positive COVID cases in that region. With that identified region, he's also defining a buffer zone around that area and implementing various restrictions. Some of those restrictions will take you back and remind you of those early days of restrictions, and some will be a little bit friendlier, depending on what color you are. With those restrictions, they're going to continue to monitor the data, increase testing, and then as the percentages go down, they'll readjust the restrictions back to the pre-identification. So there's 3 colors. There's red, orange, and yellow. Red is the highest, most critical level, and is put in to contain the spread. There's a red area in New York City. I don't think Binghamton area was kind of nearing it.
Orange and yellow.
They were orange and
Yeah. So The orange zone is a buffer zone. It goes around the red area, so it's kind of to prevent the spread going much farther. And then the yellow zone is a precautionary buffer zone. The yellow zone I'm going to spend a little bit more time on because that's, if there was a color that we had the potential to get to, it would be probably yellow. We're in a tier 2 region. We would be identified as a yellow zone if over 7 days the percent of positive cases was above 3% and has 12 or more new cases diagnosed every day. Orange would require percent of positive cases to be above 4%, and red, the percent of positive cases would be above 5%. For a point of reference, Oneida County at its peak did not hit 3% infection rate. However, there's some concerns that more people are being identified as testing positive, and so that's certainly a concern. In a yellow zone, the churches would need to go back to restricting attendance to 50% of capacity, 25 people maximum indoors or out. Businesses could remain open. Restaurants would only allow 4 people per table. If we were in a yellow zone, in order to remain open, we would need to weekly test 20% of our staff and students. The Department of Health is suggesting that school districts partner with healthcare agencies to accommodate this requirement, but the DOH has made it clear that they are not going to partner with us to assist in this process. So currently there are 2 testing sites that are free and open for appointments, where you don't need to be symptomatic in order to go. Rite Aid on Commercial Drive, and the other site is up at although it's free right now, I'm not sure how free it will be if 20% of Oneida County schools have to send their students and staff for testing. And if that's the case, I'm wondering who's going to be on the hook for payment if we're the ones who are requiring it. My concern is we're going to be the ones who are going to be on the hook for paying for it. As I've discussed it with my colleagues in different school districts, the feeling pretty much is that if we are in a yellow zone, we would go remote rather than turning us into a testing site. The state DOH, Department of Health, has set up a meeting tomorrow with superintendents. I'll let you know if I learn anything more. We're supposed to talk specifically about the microclusters and testing. One improvement that has come from the state has been the change in the governor's travel plan. Rather than automatically quarantine for 14 days if you travel outside the state, Governor Cuomo announced a change, meaning that starting tomorrow, any staff or student who travels to a state other than those contiguous to New York may test out of the mandatory 14-day quarantine to return to in-person work or school. As you know, right now, if you leave, it's a mandatory 14-day quarantine when you come back. Any staff member or student who is in another state for more than 24 hours must obtain a COVID-19 diagnostic test within 3 days of departure from whatever state they're in. And upon arrival in New York, they must complete a travel form and quarantine for 3 days. On the 4th day, they must get another COVID test, and if both tests are negative, the employer or student may return to work or school. Staff and students who were in another state for less than 24 hours do not even need to do that. They don't have to get a test prior to coming back. They don't have to quarantine for 3 days, but they must fill out the travel form upon entry and on the 4th day get a COVID-19 test. As with the original travel restrictions, local health departments will validate the tests if necessary, and if a test comes back positive, they will issue isolation orders and initiate the contact tracing from that. The local health departments are expected to contact the state the traveler came from to ensure contact tracing proceeds there as well. I do know that there is a lot of concern about what happens over the holiday break between Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's, and certainly kids coming home from colleges, family members wanting to visit. There's some concerns about putting people in a position where they may feel like they can't tell the truth about what they're doing. Some school districts are talking right now about closing, going remote from Thanksgiving until 2 weeks after New Year's, just to take care of that whole process of not exposing anybody to visitors and people who have come into our region. And kind of truthfully, I can see the advantage of both sides. My concern is it's 27 school days that we're talking about, but it's 27 school days that parents would need to get child care for. So we keep going back and forth, and I'm waiting to see kind of what the numbers look like as more and more people start to test, and we get more positive tests. I'm getting concerned. So, because the other piece is I'd like parents to have some warning about what's happening. I did get some questions this week, and so I wanted to kind of take a minute. So, sneeze guards, you'll see them. They're located in the on the cafeteria tables. That has enabled us to seat 4 students to the double tables. The sneeze guards are also located in some of the offices. Lisa and Joyce spent almost a month trying to find ones that were both approved by state ed and fit the spaces where they were needed, because there were certain criteria that went along with those. Extracurricular accounts will occasionally list tax. I know there was some concern because they saw tax on the line. Clubs and organizations are not tax exempt. So for example, students who ordered and paid for their varsity jackets, it was paid from the varsity club account as a pass-through account, but tax was charged. That's the same account we keep going. Gym uniforms are typically purchased through. So Mrs. Jacan typically writes the check out of, but kids, we deposit that money into the varsity club, and then one check is written out for the gym uniforms. This month, as it happened, all CSE meetings were for students who are currently students here at Mills. So we are the school or location of services. When the site for services is OHM BOCES or Madison United BOCES or any other site, that site is then listed as the school and location. Sometimes it's just the way it works. Our policy, I know there was a question also about the number of students who've entered recently. It's kind of that mixed blessing. Our policy that whenever a student registers is to ask for multiple proofs of residency. It ranges from bills, lease agreements, purchase agreements, etc. We've had a number of students register in our district. All have had to provide proof of residency. In addition, as we hear or suspect somebody has moved out of the district, we send a letter asking them to show a current proof of residency. So they have to resubmit an updated lease agreement, bill, anything that tells us that they are currently living in this district. I know there was a question today about the crossing guard. The district, from what I've been able to find out and from what I understand during Ms. Houghton's superintendency, they access the crossing guard position. I think it was decided back then that with the majority of our elementary students either picked up by parents or riding a bus and very few walkers, that it wasn't the priority it may have been in the past. The village, again, prior to my coming here, put the crossing guard position into their budget. We do not set the hours or terms and conditions for that employee. So I think that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Stephanie, did you receive anything for questions from the floor?
I did not.
Okay, thank you.
Nothing this evening.
Moving on to board discussion. Does anyone have anything for the good of the order? Okay, Mr. King?
I had a couple of questions. Have we had with the students that are remote, any of the students wanting to come back, and are we allowing them back?
With the elementary, all the kids that were ours at the start of the year who elected to go remote, we do have spots reserved for them still in those classrooms. So they're not specific to teachers, but to the cohort. We have a spot reserved for them, so if they decide to come back, they can. I think what we're trying to discourage at this point is the back and forth because of the difference in pacing and curriculum and things like that. So, grading, all that stuff that goes along with the back and forth. So right now, I think we're at a point where anybody who's coming back is here, and anybody who's going to stay in the remote world is going to stay there. So, we are in a position where, so as not to make our classrooms too big, that everybody new to the district is being sent to virtual for now. And that's just to keep our plan in place. So, did I answer everything?
Yeah, I'm not thrilled with the answer, but yeah.
Mrs. Albright?
So this might be a somewhat loaded question, but if we do end up going back to being able to do sports during the winter, I'm assuming that capacity would be an issue. So have we discussed possibly live streaming things or how we would address that?
Yeah, we certainly started putting, we're waiting really for the section to make some decisions.
Okay.
Right now, basketball and volleyball are considered high-risk sports. Indoor track has been canceled. So right now, the only sport that I am pretty sure is going to go is bowling.
Okay.
I know there's a couple meetings coming up to start to make those decisions. The winter sports season's been pushed back to December 14th at the earliest. So I'm not feeling pretty hopeful right now.
Okay.
Given that we've gotten whole teams quarantined if we're playing outside, my concern is what happens when they're playing inside.
I was just thinking about like the live streaming perspective of, because I know some of the other schools are doing that, for that are able to do like soccer and stuff. And just to put my 2 cents in, I'm glad that you touched on the going remote from Thanksgiving to New Year's, because it is something that I've been thinking about myself. And that's it.
Mrs. Jerry, you have anything? Mrs. Sullivan? No? Councilor Jordan? And the only thing I wanted to just make mention of, oftentimes we can be really critical of things when they're not going good, but I wanted to just take the opportunity, and I'm sure the board shares the sentiments with me. We are very appreciative of the extra efforts by our administrators here during this difficult time. Talking to my colleagues in the valley or even in the surrounding areas, we are very fortunate to have the team that we have at New York Mills. People look at us and wonder how we get it done. And that speaks to our leadership. It speaks to the teaching staff here that's willing to be flexible. It speaks to the support staff, the secretarial staff, and our cleaning staff and maintenance staff. And I think that, every so often it's just nice to remind ourselves and remind people that this place is a team effort, and it would not function the way it does if we didn't have the team in place that we do. That's all I have. I just wanted to let everyone know they are appreciated. Moving on, do we have a need for an executive session? Okay, seeing none, then I'm going to ask for a motion for adjournment. Motion, Mr. King, second, Mrs. Albright. All in favor? Thank you very much.